Well, I'm going to lead off with Budgie Smuggler. Welcome, everybody, to another socially distanced episode of Coaches on Couches.
And a chair.
And
Ding slouches.
All right, we've got a little bit different setup today. Bryant's still virtually on the couch, but
Bam, put me in there.
yeah, we're working on this whole going live, but in remote locations. So today we're going to talk about lingo, phrases that are oftentimes misused, misunderstood in the endurance world. So we're going to teach you how to talk like an endurance athlete today.
Yes. Yeah, and if you're new to the sport, this is going to be huge. Or if you are related to someone who's in the sport and you're trying to fit in at that dinner party where it's all the whole cycling group's there or all the triathletes are together, you're going to be able to fit in and know what everyone's talking about if you follow along here.
We've got a couple of those that are a couple of those phrases that are meant solely for the family.
Yes.
All right, I am Coach Dale Sanford.
And I am Coach Brian Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last decade through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off the couch to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube at Build Peak Compete, or all up on that Instagram at BPC Performance.
Nice.
Thanks.
Virtually nice.
Thanks.
All right. So we will get to all these topics of today. A couple of little orders of business. We are, we're still technically still in quarantine, stay at home, shelter in place, whatever you want to call it. In the state of Tennessee, we're supposedly things are going to start opening up May 1st. We'll see how that goes. But we are still doing our online classes, both strength training and cycling, for free until things get back to normal. So if you have any interest in those, you can find out about our strength class by going to buildpeakcompete.com. There's several prompts there to sign up for the class. If you're interested in the cycling class, you can go to hopcycling.com and sign up for that. And again, it's totally free. If you can make a donation, then we appreciate it. And if not, we want to have you anyways. Other than that, we've had to had to cancel a lot of our face-to-face stuff. Our camps, clinics, and stuff like that have all been canceled through pretty much through May. So we're looking forward to getting back going and being able to coach people face-to-face. But until then, our online classes will be available to everyone.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so before we get to the Rosetta Stone of endurance athletes, let's hit up some shout-outs.
Shout-outs! I got one. Actually, I got a lot. Do you want me to just run through all mine? Or are we just going to go back and forth? Spitballing here?
Yeah, just roll with it, man.
Dr. James Downing. Somebody call it Doctor. New peak 60s and actually all-time best 5-minute numbers. So We've been focusing a little more on anaerobic style, VO2 max style efforts, and it's paying off. We've set some short-term goals there for him, all while running St. Jude, which is no small operation to be the head of during these crazy times. So high stress at work, and he's still making it happen. So chapeau to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tony Gambrell. Yeah, I'm not done.
All right, we'll go for it, man.
Peak 20s, peak 60-minute all-time bests, peak 30-second all-time bests. He's just ringing them up. Chad Melton, 2-year bests for a lot of different values. Hart Robinson in a head-to-head sprint with his homeboy and our homeboy, David Collins.
Hollywood?
Who didn't have power. Yeah, Hollywood. Didn't have power. Hollywood didn't have power on this sprint, but Hart Robinson dropping 5 through 22nd all-time bests. Peak power.
Very nice.
Big Dave Harrington. When he's not selling steel, he's dropping watt bombs at new all-time 20-minute bests. Don Campbell, old Donnie boy.
I mean,
he upped about 20 watts on his 20-minute. Ben Ladd, he's been killing it. I won't name all the all-time bests he's had, but he's off the charts, and he's almost nearing the 300 club, which is huge.
There we go.
For threshold there. Tyler Kenyon tied his best all-time 20-minute on his last threshold test, and then followed it up with quality, some of the best in his comments, 2x20s he's done, so great work there. Lee Rustin, she was 6 miles away from being the Ride the 901 leader this past week. And Kelly Hendricks, the body shop man. Biggest stacked weekend of mileage ever. And one of those days was in the pouring rain. So
there we go.
Good work, homie.
Belgian style.
There we go. Those are mine.
Well, that was a few of them. Is it interesting that we're finding that people are making some big gains with no races and no group rides? We're actually doing hard focus across the board, and people are making these big gains.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence.
Yes.
I don't believe there, Dale.
So I've got a lot of my triathletes doing mile assessments. So Bobby Weekly, Chris Watts, Jessica Wayne, Greg Rohde, Eric Pines, Timmy Lynn, Mindy Katzman, Ryan Carmichael all had their fastest mile split ever.
Turning them legs over.
And our buddy Jeff Horn is he finished his first ever virtual multi-sport race. He did a duathlon. But even more so, the man's down 20 pounds, and we're looking forward to the rest of the season here.
Awesome.
That's what I got for today.
I like it. Keep making those gains, team. Keep making those gains.
All right. So let's get to it, man. Let's school some folks.
Well, I guess I got to start off with. So I guess we'll give a little back. So Dale's going to be handling most of the triathlete/runner lingo, and I'll be taking care of most of the cycling specific lingo. Now we're going to be. I'm more of a roadie, so we're not going to be throwing in a bunch of mountain bike stuff here. So it's going to be more focused on our roadies. But just so you know, that's how we're coming at you today.
Well, if we miss any, then comment with it. We'll add them in because we could keep going. This could be the longest episode yet. If we didn't pare it down a little bit.
I've probably got 40 of them right now.
Yeah, I have a sheet, a couple of pages. Mine may be a little bit more geared even toward triathlon, but there will be some running stuff in here as well. I'll let you lead off, Funson.
Well, I did already give the chapeau in the shout outs.
Yeah,
right?
What the heck does chapeau mean, man?
Chapeau means apparently a French word for hat, but really means sort of like the old tip of the cap. So chapeau means like great work. So nice job. So in the cycling world, if you got a buddy who just did something remarkable, give him the old chapeau to you, good sir.
There you go. Nice. Well, I'm going to lead off with Budgie Smuggler.
I like it.
Budgie Smuggler is the equivalent, basically, of Speedo. But it's not like the Speedo jammers, like the leg ones. It's like the brief, like where it leaves little to imagination.
And that's Buddy?
Budgie.
Budgie, okay.
Budgie smuggler.
Buddy smuggler would be, it'd be a different level.
Not a buddy smuggler.
All right, I got one for you. Full gas.
There you go.
A term we use a lot. When you go full gas, that means you are going all out. You are pushing as hard as you can.
I would. I'm going to add to that, and I'm going to parlay that into going blocks.
Oh yeah.
So going blocks is kind of like full gas, but you do it from the gun.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So if you go blocks, it's the gun goes off and you're full gas.
Right out of the gate. Which goes along with this next one for you, which is something I use a lot. Drop the hammer. I asked my kids, I was like, hey, you know what drop the hammer means? And my middle child goes, you take a hammer and you drop it? I'm like, kinda. When you drop the hammer, that means you lay it down and leave everyone in your wake.
Hammer dropping.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'll do some other. I'll go with some less funny ones here. Transition for those triathletes or budding triathletes out there is the point in the race where you change from one sport to the next. There's a transition area, and that is where you do the transitioning. And T1 is transition 1. That is from swim to bike. And T2 is transition to bike to run.
It is not testosterone. We are not talking about doping.
Not the type of T that you take.
All right. I got one, which was actually, I posted a little thing on Facebook asking for some stuff. And the spelling of this word, CHAMOIS. The pronunciation would be chamois.
Chamois?
Chamois? Chamois. And that would be inside of your gear, whatever lower bottom you have, your bibs, your cycling shorts, you name it. And that would be the pad that provides a softer, smoother barrier between your backside and the saddle.
There you
go. Anything to add to that? Was that description good enough?
Yeah. Well, it protects more than your backside. We'll just put it that way.
And to go along with that, I'm going to do a double here. Sticking with the chamois theme.
You didn't want me to keep going on that?
Yeah, no. I'm going to jump in. We got chamois cream, which is the stuff you put on to provide a lubricative barrier as well. And then we have chamois time is hammer time, which means if you got a chamois on, it is time to drop the hammer, which is what we just talked about before. You already know what dropping the hammer is now.
Yeah, and on that note, congratulations to chamois butter for being like the Coca-Cola of chamois cream.
Yep.
Because if you say chamois butter, that just is like an all-encompassing term for like every brand of body lube that's out there.
Yep.
So congrats. Chapeau.
Chapeau to you, chamois butter.
Chamois butter. All right. I got one, the old bonk.
Oh, yeah, I had that one too.
Yeah, bonk is, it's this sudden feeling of no energy, having zero energy, which could be from poor hydration or nutrition, but all-encompassing term of you were good and then the light switch changed and now you're not good.
And I'll just add an additional one to that, which would be to blow up. So bonk and to blow up. Sometimes, if it's a nutrition thing, a little different, but blowing up when you go super hard, you can't go anymore. The lights go out and suddenly you're gone.
I would say those are different. They're
a little different. Yeah.
One is I would say a fueling problem. Yep. The other one is a pacing problem.
Exactly.
Or a fitness problem, I guess.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go with, and you might have had this one, but clipless pedals.
Oh, I did.
Are ironically pedals that clip into a cleat that is attached to your shoe.
Yes.
I just find it ironic that clipless pedals are
and that's where it gets
involved in clipping.
confusing. Yeah. But it goes back to the time where you used to have the toe clips that you would secure your feet into. And then when they went with the clip in system,
it's about the noun and not the action.
Now clipless.
Gotcha.
But yes, clipless pedals.
All right.
Hey, less is more, baby. Less is more.
Well, I'll jumping around here, but I guess we got to talk about bricks.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
A brick is I've got a little bit of a thing with it with the term brick, but brick and transition run, in my opinion, are not the same thing. A transition run is usually just a short little run off of a longer bike ride or any bike ride in general. A brick workout is like a dedicated session that has specifics to the bike and the run. Mostly, I would say brick intervals where you're doing bike run or swim bike or two different sports back to back, and there's actually focus to each one. Otherwise, you're just doing a transition run. That's my opinion.
I like it.
So,
and Dale, right now, that's the only opinion that matters.
Yeah, well, I know that.
You got the stage.
The bike. So someone once told me it was brick came from bike B, run R, and then your legs feel like ick.
I like that better.
So that was Doug Ruddle. Shout out
bike,
Doug Ruddle.
Ick. I like that. Naturally, when I hear brick, I still revert back to my basketball days and think of a shot that clanks off the rim.
Yeah, I bet you were pretty familiar with that term.
Well played. Well played.
I don't have a zinger sound on here, but I would do it.
I know, you should. All right, I got one. I'll go on the less funny side of things. Something you'll hear people throwing around a lot if they have a power meter will be watts. And that doesn't mean watts, did you say? It means the number that is derived and showing how much effort, how much power you are producing while riding your bicycle. It's the main metric, that heart rate, but power is kind of that main metric we use with a lot of our folks. And those numbers range typically from 0 all the way up to, if you're doing more than 1,500, you're doing pretty dang good. But you'll see pros that are pushing, 2,000, track sprinters that are getting over the 2,000 mark from a wattage standpoint. But when you're hearing watts, that's what you're hearing.
There you go. All right, I'm going to break down some distance terms here. This is often, if you're not very familiar with the sport of triathlon, then when you hear the word Ironman, a lot of people just think that Ironman is triathlon. They put the two together and that they're the same thing. Ironman is actually a brand of event. They have kind of become the Coca-Cola of long distance triathlon. Mm-hmm. So an Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile marathon back to back to back. A half Ironman is half of that. 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and 13.1 mile run. But Ironman is not all that is triathlon. There is those two would fall under what we would call long course triathlon, and then short course triathlon would be Olympic distance, which is generally a 1,500 meter swim, 40K bike, and a 10K run, which is 6.2 miles. And sprint distances vary greatly. Generally speaking, it's around half of an Olympic, so 750 meter swim, about a 20K bike, and a 5K run, 3.2 mile run. And then there's also now super sprint, which is even shorter than a sprint. A lot of times they're 300-meter swims, like 8-mile bikes, and a mile run or 2-mile run. So they're super short. So all different distances of triathlon, but Ironman is not does not equal triathlon. We'll just put it that way. Let's clear that up.
There we go. Breaking it down. All right, I've got a couple other terms here. We've got gap.
Ooh.
The gap, which is typically the
I love that
description
place.
used.
All of my pants.
Fall into the gap, man. Fall into the gap. That is in a bike race, on a bike ride. You sometimes have and we'll be covering these terms also, where there's a group that's ahead, and then you'll have another group. The space between those two is called the gap. So a term that you might hear in accordance with that would be, you need to close the gap, which means you need to try to bring the group back up to that space that has come about. You may also hear bridge across the gap. Dale, when you hear bridge across the gap, what are you thinking?
That you are going to go from where you are now to the next group up the road, preferably solo.
Exactly. So you are bridging. You are creating the bridge, but hopefully you're burning the bridge behind you and not letting anyone else follow you. So the gap, essentially the space between, and then there's a lot of terms that deal with that.
Good. All right. I'm trying to find a reasonable one here. All right, so I'll kind of explain the difference between a DNF, a DFL, and a DNS.
Good.
So a DNF is a did not finish. Some people also equate it to did nothing fatal. You didn't kill yourself.
That's always good.
But you didn't cross the finish line. DFL is dead effing last. Freaking. I'm trying to keep our good graces here. And then DNS is did not start, so you didn't even make it to the start line.
That means you paid for it. You're a donor. Essentially, you're a sponsor of the event. You paid for it, but you did not actually toe the line.
Yeah, donor.
Good.
Yeah. DNS equals donor.
All right, kind of playing off that last one, we were talking about the gap and how there was a group that was in front and then another group, and in between was the gap. So we'll give a little bit of terms to that. Usually, the description for the front group, that would be the breakaway. They have broken away from the main group. And if you find yourself as part of that group in front, you are in the break. So breakaway and in the break.
It's a good place to be.
We'll come back to other pack terms here shortly.
There's a lot of them, actually.
There are.
All right, I'm going to go with gels.
Oh, good.
So gels they're not liquid, they're not solid, but they will leave your entire bike feeling like you sprayed it with Gorilla Glue.
Yes, they will.
But they are a form of nutrition. So they do offer calories and electrolytes for your physical activity, but they are sticky and they will demolish some bike hardware if you don't clean it.
And chapeau to Goo, who is sort of the Coca-Cola of the gel world.
Yep. Yeah, when you hear goos, if you hear goos, somebody is not always just talking about the Goo brand. Mm-hmm. They could be talking about any of the trillion gel brands out there.
Yep. All right, next one, sticking with the pack terms here. So the pack, the main pack, where most of the people are at, is given the term Peloton, not the new indoor bike that you have. That was based off this term, which is Peloton, which is the main group within either a group ride or most notably a race.
I got one. You triggered one here.
Okay.
Draft pack.
Oh.
Whew. Here we go.
Are we talking about Ironman Texas here?
We're talking about any pack of cheaters that are riding together in a non-drafting triathlon race. For those that don't know, most triathlons are non-drafting, and there are specifics to how far you have to stay away from another rider and how much time you have to make a pass on a rider if you get within that distance. But a lot of times in big races, especially long course races, those rules are not necessarily followed, or they don't really force you to not draft. There's like a couple motos that go around, or officials that go around, and there's always giant packs of people riding in each other's draft and getting the benefit of that draft. So in my opinion, that's cheating. So draft packs, not good. Don't find yourself in one. If they catch you, it's also like a 2-minute penalty or 4-minute penalty that you have to sit in one of the tents and just put your foot down and hang out.
Yeah.
So don't be that person.
Don't be that person. All right. Sticking with the pack terminology, Dale. I'm still on it. We've got the chasers or the chase group. So sometimes in a race or in a spirited group ride, you may have the lead group, and then which is the main breakaway. But then you may have a group that's in between the peloton. So now there's 2 gaps. We got 2 gaps now, or more gaps than that. But if you are in between the lead group and the peloton, you are now called the chasers or the chase group. Now, it can get confusing because the peloton could be chasing, which means they're working hard to try to catch the lead group. I'll keep rolling with this just so I'm not continuing to come back to this. We have the leader. So if you're solo, if you're by yourself off the front, that would be a term, off the front. So you may hear your significant other or friend say, "Man, I was off the front of the group." That means you have broken away, and now you are up the road. You are in the break, and that could be a solo breakaway. On the contrary, you may be off the pack, which may put you into a spot where you are DFL. There's a chance you could be DFL, which you just learned. But yeah, you may be off the back. So we got off the front and off the back, and they're all in relation to the peloton.
I'm gonna flip over and get confusing here. Off the back, OTB. We also use the term OTB for off the bike. So OTB run, off the bike run. Got to be careful with your acronyms.
You really do.
It gets sticky.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to go in with a couple of training terms that are often misused. One is lactate. So
milk.
Yeah,
milk.
It's not dairy.
Lactose.
It's the negatively charged compounds. It's basically a waste product from the body producing energy aerobically. So that is your lactate, but then people like to use the term lactic acid, which is not physically acid traveling your body, but it is. It's just really a misused term, but it's basically produced at the same time as lactate, but it's hydrogen ions that cause that kind of burning feeling in your muscles. So lactate and lactic acid, not the same.
I like it. Sticking with more physiological stuff here, let's go with threshold. So you'll hear that get thrown around quite a bit as well. Threshold, in its easiest form, would be about what you could handle, an effort you could handle for 1 hour if you were going a max even-paced effort. But actually figuring out what your true threshold is, that is where your body is accumulating. So it's building up that lactate. and it's not able to clear it. So that spot where you're able to clear it just fast enough would be your lactate threshold. Once you start getting above that effort level where your body's now unable to clear the amount of lactate that's being produced, you are now above threshold, and your ability to sustain that effort goes way down. But threshold, and if you start hearing people talk about your threshold power number, threshold watts, that's what they're referring to. What can you hold? FTP.
Yeah, functional threshold power, FTP.
Yeah.
Or particularly lactate threshold is what you were talking about, where you don't clear the point where you
yes,
can't clear lactate.
Correct.
All right, I'm going to go with LSD.
Yeah, I had that one down too.
More
drugs.
More commonly used in the 70s and 80s. But
different performance gains.
Stands for long, slow duration. Long, slow duration. Just slogging out miles.
Which would essentially be more in line with like an endurance effort. So we talked about threshold, so endurance effort, longer, slower duration, LSD workouts, stuff that you can sustain for long periods of time. And you build your aerobic engine. Building mitochondria, we'll call it. All right, I got a few. Jump.
What?
Not like in basketball. But if you try to jump, when you jump in the sport of cycling, that is where you put in a sprint-style effort to either break away from the group or possibly bridge the gap to a breakaway or to a chase group. So when you jump, that means you typically stand, which is where the term would come from. You put down a really high amount of effort to try to break away from the group.
There you go. I'm going to go with Expo. Expo is a place at a race where they keep $10 tubes and overly priced hoodies. No, I'm kidding. It's a place at races where all of the vendors put up their tents and show off their cool stuff, and there is a lot of expensive stuff there. Mm-hmm. Expo.
And if you forgot your stuff because you didn't have a checklist of equipment you should be bringing, you'll be utilizing their products and services.
Oh, yes.
All right, so different than jump, we have surge. You may be told to stop surging, or you may be intentionally surging. But that essentially means you are putting in an effort harder than what the group is putting out. So you are doing an acceleration, but it's not quite like a sprint or a jump. This would just be a ramping of power, a ramping of effort outside the flow of what the group has been doing.
What is that? What was that term?
Surge.
Oh, surge. I thought you were
surge.
I thought you were talking about just being a jerk.
Stop surging. If you're newer to the sport and you're working in a pace line, which we're going to talk about briefly, or here shortly, I mean, then stop surging is probably something you're going to hear a lot of. And that's where you're going through way too hard and you're opening up gaps.
I just ask people if they're a surgeon.
Good dad joke.
All right. I got the Ironman Shuffle.
Oh, yes.
Not to be confused with the Super Bowl Shuffle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the Ironman Shuffle is when you're basically bonked out at the end of an Ironman race, mm-hmm. and you are doing everything you can to get to the finish line, basically unable to pick your feet up very high off the ground, and you're shuffling.
Every day you're shuffling.
There you go.
I like it. You'll see a lot of that, for sure, if you watch the finish line photos. So pace line. Since we talked about pace line in that last one, I guess I should have said that one first. The pace line would be when a group of cyclists are now riding within a much more, how would we call it? In order, for example. So you're like in a line, and the goal here is to work together to try to travel at a faster pace. You have a rotating pace line. You can have a double rotating pace line. You can have a single pace line. But essentially, this means you are going to be sharing your turns where you're doing the work on the front of the group, rotating off in some fashion, and the next person is taking over. Very efficient form of cycling. Part of my favorite part about riding would be the pace line. A fast rotating pace line in a crosswind. It's fun.
There you go. All right, so I'm going to talk about the start types of triathlon here.
Okay.
So we've got a mass start, which is something. It's an antiquated version of the race start these days. You don't see too many of them where they just let every person in the race go at the same time. But a mass start really is just everyone lines up, they say go, and everyone goes. So you've got also a wave start, which is a little bit more common, where they will break the entire field into smaller groups and allow them to start in smaller groups. You've got a time trial start where everyone lines up in one big line and starts 3 to 5 seconds apart. So it's kind of more safety precaution these days than anything else. A floating start is where they put you in the water and you can't touch the bottom, and they'll say go. It could be a combination of a floating and a wave start, or a floating and a mass start. You got a beach start, obviously, where you're on the beach and you'll be running into the water. And then there's also dock and pier starts, where you're going to start jumping off of a dock or a pier. And then they also have boat starts. Get on a ferry boat and jump off the ferry boat. Old Alcatraz.
I like it.
Yeah.
I picture...
there's a bunch of
is
swim
it kind
run
of like
races
Baywatch?
too. Yeah, just like Baywatch. Yep.
Just Hasselhoff diving head first off
just a bunch of
front
hoffs.
of the boat.
Just a bunch of hoffs jumping off.
I like it. We good there?
I'm done with that one.
All right. So some terms that you'll hear within the group. You may hear someone in a pace line say pull through, which means it's your turn to come up in the group and put an effort in on the front. You may also hear or tell someone to follow that wheel. So if someone surges, if someone attacks, if someone's trying to bridge, following that wheel means you're just going to get right behind that person and essentially get a free ride, not do any work. You're just going to sit on in their draft, which goes to the next one, sucking wheel. If you are a wheel sucker, you are a person who is sitting in. It means you are not sharing the load. You are saving as much energy as you can. And, that can be a great strategy, but it also doesn't make you the most liked person in the group, typically. I'm going to type.
I'm going to go. I'm breaking in.
You're breaking in. Go for it.
About as much as a half wheeler.
Oh.
If you're in
go ahead and tell them a half wheeler real quick.
If you're in a double pace line and you're on the front and the person that is next to you is constantly about half a wheel length up ahead of you, forcing you to then go harder and try to match them. And every time you get up next to them, they accelerate again. That is a half wheeler. Also in the jerk category of cyclists.
Yes, exactly. And while we're on it, sandbagger. If you are sitting in, there's a good chance you could be a sandbagger. Well, I guess that won't be right. If you are riding this is typically for a race. So you are riding within a category that you are much stronger than. So you are at a much higher level than everyone else, yet you stay within that race category so that you can have your personal glory rather than racing against people much closer to your ability level.
Yeah, there are sandbaggers in the world of triathlon as well. And in that respect, it's just people who stay in the age group category when they are more than capable of racing as a pro. But Honestly, there's not a whole lot of reason for people to go pro these days, unless they're found a way to magically make a living out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sandbagger.
Sandbagger. It's a good one.
So chain suck. Chain suck?
That's a good one.
Yeah, so that is when your chain falls off the front chain ring and gets lodged into your frame.
That is not good.
No. I've had it happen in races a couple times. A lot of times it happens because you shifted under load and the chain got really loose, so it popped off, and then you kept pedaling, and it just wraps the chain up in your frame. It usually causes damage to something.
Oh yeah,
the frame, the chain, or all of the above.
All yes,
not a good thing.
And sometimes requires a ton of force to dislodge. Oftentimes,
you're gonna have a greasy hand. Let's put it that way.
So while we're on the topic of chains, the things your chain actually connects to, you have your crankset, which would be the front gears of your bike, including the arms, which are the crank arms, and your pedals are now attached to those. Typically, you have rings of different sizes in the front part of the bike where your pedals are attached. You have a big chain ring. You have a small chain ring. Sometimes people have what's called a triple, which means you may have 3 rings. Along with crankset terminology, you have a standard crankset, which would be a 53 big ring and a 39 typically small ring.
That's teeth, number of teeth.
Number of teeth, there we go. Then you have a subcompact, which is like usually a 52 and a 36, big and small. And then you have a compact crankset, which would be a 50 front big ring and a typically 34 small ring. And then if we take it to the back of the bike, you have what's called a cassette. Your cassette will have a number of cogs. The number of cogs you have determines what type of drivetrain, the number of gears you have. So you may have an 8, a 9, a 10, 11, or possibly even a 12. And unless you're riding a fixie, Dale, then how many do you have?
1.
You have only 1. So a fixed gear or even a single speed, all you have is 1. And the turkey platter. If someone says, man, that person was riding a turkey platter, that means their big chain ring was huge. The number of teeth, likely in excess of 55 teeth. They make them all the way up to, they make them massive. But
60?
Yeah, you'll see people riding 60 or even more, which is a massive front chain ring.
You did say fixie without explaining it. A fixed gear bike is one that does not freewheel. So the pedals turn if the wheels are turning.
Yep. So track bikes. So people, if you ever watch a velodrome track event, they are on fixed gear bikes, which means if you stop pedaling, that thing is skidding like a kid riding a BMX bike.
Coaster brakes, baby.
Style. Or a lot of the hipsters that you'll see, they love the fixed gear. Now, single speed is different because it's still just one gear, but you can freewheel, so you can stop pedaling and your bike will continue to roll.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to lighten things up. Hot tubbing.
That does not mean post-race recovery, does it, Dale?
No, it doesn't. Hot tubbing is when you pee in your wetsuit next to somebody that's totally oblivious to you peeing in your wetsuit.
Full disclosure, Dale just came up with that earlier.
It needed a term, man.
It does need a term.
I'm coining that hashtag hot tubbing.
I think it's totally appropriate. Totally appropriate. More bike part stuff here. So if you're in the drops, on a road-specific style bike, you have the kind of the drop horn looking things on your bike. If you're down in the drops, you're in that low, wide portion of your bike. If you're up on the hoods, so the hoods are the spot where your brakes and your gear levers are, assuming you're not on like a down tube style shifter bike. Most likely you're not. But if you're up on the hoods, that means you're up and forward on the bike.
There you go. I'm gonna keep this these ambiguous terms. Well,
good. Keep them going.
Well, I'll just go this one. Mount line. So let that sit in. Mount.
Did you say mountain lion?
Mount line. Depends where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you heard is what it is.
I picture Ricky Bobby in the back of that car with a cougar.
So the mount line is where you have to pass this mount line before you can get on your bike after T1, transition 1. There is also a dismount line. The dismount line is usually the same line, but you have to be off of your bike before you cross that line, going into T2.
Simple enough.
Mount line.
And when you're seeing cross-eyed, you may totally forget that there is a mount and dismount line.
I've said it before on the podcast. If you're a spectator and you want entertainment, go stand next to the mount and dismount line.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Like a NASCAR race.
For sure. All right, so if you hear someone say, I was mashing big gears in my 5311. So we got a couple of terms there. Mashing gears.
Break that down, Funson.
means you're pushing some big power. We already know about watts now. You're pushing that big power typically at a lower cadence level. So your RPMs, your rotation per minute. We got more terms here. Cadence. On the lower side, but 5311, if you hear someone saying they're in a 5311, that just means they're in the big ring, that 53 tooth front. And now they have a 10 tooth cog rear, but for the longest time, the 11 was like the smallest, hardest gear you could get for your rear cassette. So if you're in a 5311 just mashing, that means you are rolling.
That's big gear.
It's big gear.
All right, so I've got saddle sore.
Oh.
I mean, it's sort of self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
But a saddle sore is essentially when you get a serious abrasion or sometimes an ingrown hair in your nether regions due to excessive saddle pressure or friction from your chamois.
Sounds like a great sport.
Hey, if you got your bike dialed in, it's usually not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Going with that, I'm going to layer on some road rash, Dale. Road rash. So saddle sores, a not comfortable part of the sport. Road rash. I wish I could say I never experienced it, but when you wreck, the resulting abrasions that you generally get are termed road rash. So where you've kissed the asphalt and rubbed skin off your body, that is your road rash spots. A little pro tip here. Getting the road rash via the wreck hurts less than scrubbing the road rash out in the shower afterwards. But you got to do it. No one likes infections.
I'm going to throw this one in there. If you'll probably know this if you're into wound care, but Tegaderm. Tegaderm is the plastic film that you can put over your road rash so that you don't have to shell out hundreds of dollars for new sheets. Yes.
Pro tip. The Tegaderm will leak, so you also need some sort of moisture-absorbing pad. We should do a whole thing on wound care.
We should.
Unfortunately. We're pros
all
at
too
that.
Familiar.
Unfortunately, we're pros at that. All right, let's go with spun out. So we were talking about cadence, and we were talking about 5311s. If you are spun out in your 5311, it means you are pedaling so fast that your feet can't even keep up with how fast your rear wheel is turning. And that can be a bad thing, or it can be a good thing. If you spin out a 5311 on some flat ground, you're probably going about 38, 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But being spun out means you don't have enough gears. You need another gear. And I'll go with one more, kind of in line with this whole cadence thing. We had 5311. Now we also have granny gear. Apologies to all the grannies out there. But our granny gear is when you have a really big cog in the back attached to your back wheel, which allows you to travel really slow while continuing to pedal and put power out. So having a granny gear or a bailout gear is just referring to that easiest gear you have. And they're making big ones of those now too.
Oh yeah. My gravel bike has a 42 on it.
And Dale uses it all the time.
I love it. Love it.
Don't go home without it. Or don't leave home without it.
Nope.
All right, what else you got? You got more?
I'm going to go a little into hydration. Electrolytes.
Ooh, good.
Electrolytes are charged particles that help push electrical impulses throughout the body. And the main ones are sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. And they're extremely important in a lot of different physiological processes, but sodium being the most important. And then
Excellent.
I will go to hyponatremia.
Ooh.
Buzzword these days. So hyponatremia is a condition where your blood sodium levels get extremely low, and you generally have some pretty adverse performance effects because of that. Won't go into them, but yes, there's a whole another episode on that. You can go back.
Oh, for sure. Let me go with some pronunciations. We did chamois already. Now I'm going to go with a lot of people's favorite cyclist, and for good reason, 3-time world champ, Peter, Sagan, pronounced Sagan, Peter Sagan, not Sagan. Don't go calling him Sagan. And another one, which, full disclosure, I had to look up how to pronounce because I usually just refer to it as Campy. Let's go with Campy. So Campagnolo, the fine Italian maker of bike components, is actually pronounced. It's not Campagnolo, it's Pen, and then you only live once. YOLO. Campagnolo. There you go. You're welcome. If you stuck around this long, if nothing else, I learned how to say it today.
I really don't have a whole lot of other ones that are humorous or keep going on the generic stuff, but I think we covered a lot of the ones that raise eyebrows. Yeah,
you covered some good ones there, Dale.
Especially hot tubbing.
The hot tubbing was the best, I think. All right, I'll just fire through a few more. I know we're getting kind of long here. I'll just fire through a few more. Dale, if you want to just jump in on descriptions, feel free.
Oh, I have one more.
Okay.
Triathlon widow.
Triathlon. Oh, that's a good one.
Is the spouse that's constantly left alone with the family because of the training habits of the other half.
Yep.
There you go. Triathlon widow.
Yeah. Be careful with that one. Life balance. We can help you out, folks. We can help you out. We have crosswind, which just means the wind is hitting you from the side and not from the north or the front or the back. And then we have guttered. So if you hear someone say, man, they had me guttered in the crosswind, that means the draft that you were trying to get, you can only go so far in a crosswind because you stagger. And eventually you get to a spot where you run out of road. In that situation, you are now in the gutter. And that means you are not receiving the same draft as someone who is up ahead of you. And if you're in the gutter, it's only so long before you may be popped, blow up, off the back, but guttered. It's where you get put into the gutter in a crosswind. Then we got. Go ahead, Dale.
Or you get curbed, and then you're done.
That's also bad. Basic terms. Dale talked about the different distances for triathlons. We got century and metric century. Essentially, that means 100 miler. So a century is 100 miler. A metric is a 100 kilometers, so 62 miles. We got car back and car up. So when you're in a group, it's good to be safe, letting people know when there's a car coming or there's a car behind you, or when a car is coming around you. Car up, car back, car round is terminology you'll hear. This is a good one, Dale. I'll let you take this one. KOM and QOM.
KOM. Well, yeah. Well, Strava. It's not actually Strava's term. I wouldn't say.
No, not at all.
QOM. Yeah. King of the Mountain is actually the leader in the climbing competition in any grand tour, any larger tour, grand tour. QOM obviously is the female version of that, Queen of the Mountain, but Strava has adopted those terms to show the person who is leading or has the fastest time in a specific segment of road in a general area. So KOM, QOM, and I would say that people put way too much effort into getting KOMs.
Yes, exactly. Let's go with what cat are you?
Oh.
So what cat are you just refers to your cycling categories. So there are different categories that you enter as a Cat 5, now known as the novice category. And then as you improve and get more points based on race results and number of races you've done, you move to a 4, to a 3, to a 2, to a 1, and then a pro from there. But if you hear someone say, hey, what cat are you? That essentially means what racing category are you? And if you hear someone say, hey, that's a sweet Cat 5 tattoo you got there.
I was totally going there.
That means you have brushed your right calf against that right chain ring and chain, and now you've got this nice greasy imprint that looks like a tattoo on your leg. That's referred to as the Cat 5 tattoo. As you ride more, you become very alert to not letting the grease get on the inside of your leg, so that you don't. Or also known as the Fred tattoo as well. So Fred also being a new beginner to the sport.
I think
this is getting too long. I got more.
We should end with that one. I think we're going to end on that one.
I won't tell them about building the matchbook.
We could do another one. We'll do
Presta and Schrader down?
No. All right,
Protect
folks.
your wheel?
Funston's going to keep going. If you want
That's a sweet kit.
If you want to dial into Funston, he's going to keep going on this. But we appreciate you guys hanging out, listening, watching, and we'll catch you next time. Adios.
Peace.